The sun dipped lazily over Crestwood Park, casting golden streaks through the ancient oaks, whose sprawling limbs stretched protectively over the winding paths and rusted benches. Leonard Hughes settled onto his favorite bench. Its paint, long faded the wood, polished smooth by countless afternoons spent reading beneath the branches. His eyes, worn by age but sharp with intellect, scanned the familiar lines of "To Kill a Mockingbird." Though today, the words danced away elusive as his attention wavered. It was unusually quiet today. Leonard often chose weekday afternoons precisely because the park was mostly deserted, save for an occasional jogger or a mother pushing a stroller. Today, though, the silence felt different, tainted by an unspoken tension he couldn't quite place. Leonard adjusted his reading glasses and breathed deeply, letting the Georgia summer fill his lungs, pushing away any lingering unease. From somewhere across the field came youthful laughter, sharp and intrusive against the park's tranquility. Leonard glanced up, watching three figures approaching from the parking lot. Teenagers, two confidently leading another slightly behind his posture, betraying discomfort. Leonard had seen them before. Crestwood was small enough that faces quickly became familiar. They moved like they owned the world, carrying themselves with the careless arrogance of boys who'd never been denied anything. At their forefront swaggered Jake Bennett's son, of Crestwood's influential council chairman, whose well-groomed blonde hair and expensive clothes were unmistakable symbols of privilege. Close behind him strode Tyler Ramsey, heir to the town's wealthiest real estate magnate, every step brimming with entitlement. Lagging slightly was Aaron Mitchell, whose father headed the local bank. Aaron's expression suggested he'd rather be anywhere but here. Leonard returned to his book, hoping they'd pass by without incident. But instinctively, his grip tightened on the cane leaning beside him, a reflex born from too many memories of confrontations past. The laughter grew louder, and within moments, their shadows darkened Leonard's page, blocking the last rays of sun. "Hey, old man," Jake called, his voice dripping with feigned politeness. "Mind if we interview you? We're making a documentary." He waved a smartphone mockingly in Leonard's direction. Leonard calmly turned a page, his voice even non-committal. "I'd prefer not to participate, young man." Jake chuckled, nudging Tyler, clearly unfazed. "You sure about that? Might make you famous." Tyler laughed, pulling out his phone, filming already. Aaron hesitated a step behind his face, turning pale. "Seriously, Jake, maybe we shouldn't." Aaron started, barely audible. "Shut up," Jake hissed without breaking his grin. He stepped closer to Leonard, phone-pointed eyes gleaming. "Come on, Grandpa. Tell us what it's like living off welfare." Leonard looked up, his gaze steady and unwavering. The quiet strength in his eyes seemed momentarily to unsettle Jake, but the boy quickly masked it with bravado. "I've earned my keep," Leonard said softly, clearly. "Just as you someday must earn yours," Tyler snorted. "Earned sitting around reading all day. You're probably milking taxpayers for every penny." Leonard sighed gently, placing the worn paperback carefully on the bench beside him. "You boys misunderstand greatly," he said with a quiet dignity. "There are things you cannot yet comprehend." Jake leaned closer, taunting. "Maybe you can teach us then. Tell us all about picking cotton, huh? That's your era, isn't it?" Aaron visibly winced, his eyes darting nervously around the deserted park. "Guys, come on. You stay out of this, Aaron," Jake snapped. "Or are you suddenly a defender of the helpless?" Leonard's voice cut through their chatter, low, yet commanding, startling them into momentary silence. "Gentlemen, ignorance is forgivable, but cruelty is another matter entirely. Choose your next words wisely." Jake, angered by the rebuke, swiftly stepped forward, pushing Leonard's cane just beyond reach, sending it clattering onto the walkway. "Oops," he mocked dramatically. "Looks like you dropped something." Leonard took a deep breath, his dignity intact, refusing to stoop to their provocation. Slowly, deliberately, he stood gripping the bench armrest for support, his legs trembling slightly without the cane's aid. "Where are you going, old man?" Jake sneered, stepping into Leonard's path. Tyler's phone captured every move, every expression. Aaron shifted anxiously, his gaze pleading silently for his friends to stop. "Allow me to pass," Leonard said steadily, his tone firm yet controlled. "Or what?" Jake challenged, grinning cruelly. In a sudden movement, Jake shoved Leonard hard against the bench, causing him to lose balance. Leonard fell heavily, a sharp pain shooting through his side as he hit the concrete. His glasses flew from his face, skittering across the ground. "Oh my God!" Aaron whispered, frozen in shock. Tyler laughed nervously, still filming, clearly uncomfortable but unwilling to stop. Leonard slowly propped himself up, his dignity battered but unbroken. As he reached for his glasses, Jake stepped closer, filming Leonard's struggle gleefully. "Smile for the camera, Grandpa." Leonard's fingers closed around his glasses, the world coming back into focus just as Jake's triumphant smirk filled his vision. Unknown to all of them, hidden behind nearby trees, another figure had recorded every moment, a figure who recognized Leonard immediately, whose breath caught sharply as realization dawned. As the three teenagers swaggered away, oblivious to the repercussions already unfolding, Leonard pulled himself to his feet, gripping the cane retrieved from the pavement, his expression steady, unwavering. He straightened slowly, eyes tracing their retreating figures, knowing they'd just ignited a storm none of them could yet fathom. Angela Hughes stormed into her Manhattan office, her phone vibrating incessantly with notifications. Coffee barely touched her lips before her assistant Maria rushed into the room, eyes wide with alarm. "Angela, you need to see this right now." Angela glanced up sharply, recognizing the urgency in Maria's voice. Without another word, Maria handed over her tablet. On the screen, Angela saw the shaky footage from Crestwood Park. Her father's unmistakable frame crumpled on the concrete, the mocking voices of the teenagers echoing loudly through the room. Her heart stopped. "Dad!" Her voice cracked, disbelief and fury tangling her thoughts. Angela watched in horror as Leonard slowly rose, dignity in his every painful movement. The video ended abruptly, but it had already seared itself into her memory. "Find out everything, Maria. Names, backgrounds now." Angela's voice trembled, rage coursing through her veins like molten metal. Maria nodded and quickly left the room. Angela dialed her father's number, her heart pounding painfully against her ribs. Leonard answered on the third ring, his voice steady but weary. "Angela, I assume you've seen it." "Dad, why didn't you call me?" Angela's voice was a mix of accusation and concern. "Are you hurt? I've had worse." "Angela," Leonard replied softly, reassuringly. "Bruises heal. This goes deeper." Angela exhaled sharply, running a hand through her dark hair. "I'm coming home tonight. Don't try to talk me out of it." Leonard paused briefly, then sighed. "All right, honey. I'll see you tonight." Angela spent the afternoon canceling meetings and rearranging her schedule. Maria returned with a file on the teenagers, her expression grim. Angela flipped through quickly, eyes narrowing as she absorbed the details. "Jake Bennett, Tyler Ramsey, Aaron Mitchell," she muttered. "Privileged boys playing at cruelty. They have no idea who they just crossed." As Angela boarded her flight, the video went viral, spreading rapidly across social media. Crestwood, a quiet southern town rarely noticed by the broader world, suddenly found itself thrust into the spotlight. Reactions flooded in shock, disgust, anger, but alongside the outrage, troubling defenses and dismissive justifications appeared. In Crestwood, Leonard sat quietly at his kitchen table, scrolling through the growing storm online. His phone buzzed with messages, former colleagues, journalists, community leaders, all reaching out. Leonard's brow furrowed in quiet contemplation. He had spent his career delivering justice, yet here he was, once again, at its mercy. Across town, Jake Bennett lounged carelessly in his spacious bedroom, laughing with Tyler about the video's rising views. Aaron sat nearby, silent and uncomfortable, staring at his shoes. Jake's father, Henry Bennett, stormed into the room, face red eyes blazing. "What the hell were you thinking, Jake?" That old man was Leonard Hughes, a federal judge. Henry's voice shook with anger. Jake's laughter died abruptly. "A judge? How was I supposed to know he looked like nobody?" Henry shook his head, frustration evident. That nobody presided over civil rights cases for 30 years. "You boys didn't just bully an old man, you started a firestorm." Jake's smug confidence drained away, replaced by a shadow of genuine fear. Tyler glanced nervously at Jake, while Aaron's hands tightened into anxious fists. Angela arrived late in Crestwood, greeted by the humid southern night, thick with tension. Leonard met her at the door, his embrace strong despite the day's trauma. "It's worse than you think," Angela whispered fiercely. "These boys, their families, they've been doing this for generations. It's time someone held them accountable." Leonard nodded gravely. "I agree, but it won't be easy. People here prefer to hide from uncomfortable truths." The next morning, Angela wasted no time. Local news vans already crowded the street outside Leonard's modest home. She stepped confidently onto the porch, Leonard standing quietly by her side, and faced the crowd. "My name is Angela Hughes. Most of you know my father Leonard Hughes as a retired federal judge, a man who dedicated his life to justice. What happened yesterday was not an isolated incident. It reflects deep-rooted prejudices and systemic failures in Crestwood." Reporters shouted questions, cameras clicked incessantly, capturing every determined line on her face. "We intend not only to hold those involved accountable, but also to confront the underlying culture that allowed such cruelty to thrive. Today we announce our lawsuit not against these misguided youths alone, but against Crestwood's educational and political institutions that fostered their prejudice and entitlement." Across town, Henry Bennett watched Angela's statement live, his knuckles white around his coffee mug. Tyler's father, Robert Ramsey, paced anxiously, phone buzzing with calls from investors and worried partners. Aaron's father, William Mitchell, stared quietly at the television, understanding the gravity more deeply than his peers. In the center of the growing storm stood Leonard Hughes, calm and dignified, his quiet strength becoming a rallying point for those long silenced. He knew better than anyone justice often began with a single act of defiance. Crestwood stirred with unrest. The lawsuit announced by Angela Hughes set off waves of panic and controversy as long-standing secrets bubbled dangerously close to the surface. Leonard's quiet house became the epicenter of action, the calm within a gathering storm. His daughter moved swiftly, bringing in civil rights attorneys, activists and journalists who began piecing together decades of hidden prejudice. In a small community center, stories long silenced began to surface. Mrs. Eloise Carter, a retired teacher whose gentle demeanor concealed a lifetime of suppressed anger, spoke first. Her voice trembled slightly, but held firm conviction. "My grandson had top grades, perfect attendance, yet his scholarship was handed to a white student with half his achievements. When I complained my younger grandson was suspended for behavior issues the very next week." The murmurs grew louder as more townsfolk stepped forward, each story a fragment in a larger, uglier picture. James Wallace, once Crestwood High's star athlete, recounted being suspended and stripped of his scholarship after an altercation instigated by white teammates. Coach knew the truth, but the board had already made up their minds, James recalled bitterly. Angela listened carefully, notes accumulating quickly. Leonard sat quietly beside her, his presence lending dignity and gravity to the painful testimonies. "These aren't isolated incidents," Angela declared, firmly addressing the packed room. "They're systemic, institutionalized prejudice, and it's time we confront them." Meanwhile, in the affluent neighborhoods of Crestwood, panic spread like wildfire. Henry Bennett paced his living room anxiously, lawyers and PR consultants buzzing around him, strategizing futilely against the rising tide. Robert Ramsey fielded calls from nervous investors, his voice increasingly tense as the community's hidden injustices came under relentless scrutiny. William Mitchell. Aaron's father sat quietly in his study, his brow deeply furrowed. Unlike his peers, William understood the broader implications. His bank had quietly participated in discriminatory lending practices for decades. Now, with scrutiny intensifying, his complicity could no longer be concealed. He dialed Angela Hughes's number with shaking hands, realizing it was time to choose sides. "I want to help," he confessed quietly when she answered, his voice heavy with remorse. "I've watched these injustices for years. I've done nothing no longer. I'll testify." Angela accepted calmly, knowing every voice added strength to their cause. Each confession made their case irrefutable. Across town, Jake Bennett grew increasingly anxious, the walls of privilege that had always shielded him beginning to crumble. Tyler Ramsey avoided his calls, isolating himself from the growing consequences. Aaron Mitchell, conflicted and troubled, finally broke his silence. Aaron appeared unexpectedly at Leonard's doorstep one evening, shoulders slumped, eyes hollow. Leonard, sensing the boy's internal struggle, invited him in without hesitation. Angela watched cautiously as Aaron fumbled for words. "I knew it was wrong," Aaron stammered, fighting tears. "But I was afraid. I didn't stop them." His voice cracked painfully. "I'm sorry, Judge Hughes." Leonard regarded the young man quietly, sensing sincerity behind his remorse. "Courage," Leonard spoke softly, "isn't the absence of fear, Aaron. It's acting despite it." Aaron nodded slowly, understanding the gravity of the wisdom imparted. "I want to testify," he said firmly, glancing at Angela. "I'll tell everything about Jake Tyler, their families. The stuff they say, the things they do. People need to know." Angela nodded slowly, carefully hiding her surprise. "Your testimony could make all the difference, Aaron." Days later, the court hearings commenced. The courtroom was packed, charged with expectation and tension. Angela presented damning evidence meticulously, decades of records, discriminatory emails, text exchanges, security footage suppressed for years. William Mitchell's testimony shocked Crestwood, further detailing systemic banking practices that discriminated against minorities perpetuated quietly for generations. When Aaron stepped up to testify, a hush settled heavily upon the courtroom. Jake's and Tyler's families glared daggers, tension radiating. Aaron spoke clearly, truth pouring forth unhindered. The room listened in stunned silence as he recounted countless acts of cruelty and prejudice, masked by affluence and privilege. When Aaron finished, his eyes met Leonard's, searching desperately for forgiveness. In that brief exchange, Leonard offered a gentle nod, granting absolution more profound than words. Then Jake Bennett surprised everyone, standing abruptly, his voice trembling yet defiant. "This is ridiculous. You can't ruin our lives over one mistake." His outburst was met with immediate rebuke from Judge Elise Mallory, whose sharp gaze silenced him instantly. "Mr. Bennett's actions bear consequences," Judge Mallory stated coldly. "Perhaps it's time you learned accountability." Leonard watched calmly, his face a mask of quiet dignity. He knew this was just the beginning, a painful yet necessary process toward true justice long overdue in Crestwood. The air in the courtroom was thick with tension and expectation. Crestwood residents filled every available seat, the atmosphere charged with an emotional undercurrent of anticipation and dread. Leonard sat quietly at the plaintiff's table, his composed demeanor unyielding despite the emotional upheaval around him. Angela Hughes rose gracefully, her voice calm and assured. "Your Honor, what we see here today is not simply the misbehavior of a few misguided youths. It's the inevitable manifestation of decades of systemic inequality and unchecked privilege." She methodically presented evidence backed by compelling testimonies from affected townspeople and hard data illustrating discriminatory practices in local schools, banks, and government institutions. Each revelation drew audible gasps and murmurs from the packed audience, the reality of Crestwood's hidden biases undeniable. William Mitchell's testimony carried particular weight, painting a vivid picture of institutionalized racism within the town's financial sector. Loans were systematically denied to minority businesses. William explained, his voice filled with genuine regret. It was deliberate, calculated. We contributed directly to economic disparities. Leonard listened silently, feeling a bittersweet mix of sorrow and vindication. He had spent his entire career battling these very injustices from the bench. Yet here in his own community, the fight felt deeply personal and profoundly painful. Jake Bennett sat stiffly, his arrogance fraying visibly under scrutiny. Beside him, Tyler Ramsey appeared, diminished eyes downcast, avoiding direct contact. Aaron Mitchell maintained a resolute, albeit shaken presence, steadfast in his newfound courage. Finally, the judge addressed Leonard directly. "Judge Hughes, would you like to speak before the court delivers its verdict?" Leonard rose slowly, gripping his cane tightly. His voice was steady, yet imbued with quiet authority. "Throughout my career, I have learned that justice is never fully achieved through punishment alone. True justice lies in accountability, understanding, and ultimately, transformation." He turned to face Jake, Tyler, and Aaron directly. "You three young men stand at a crossroads, a moment where you decide the type of men you will become. Your past actions have consequences, yes, but your future is not yet written." Leonard paused briefly, allowing his words to resonate deeply within the silent courtroom. "It is my sincere hope," he continued softly, "that this experience becomes your catalyst for genuine change." The courtroom fell silent, tension palpable. Aaron was the first to react abruptly, standing, tears streaming openly down his face. "Judge Hughes, I am so sorry for what we did, for what I allowed to happen." With a determined step, Aaron approached Leonard's table and, to everyone's astonishment, dropped to his knees in an earnest plea for forgiveness. The courtroom erupted into shocked whispers, and stunned silence, eyes locked onto the emotional tableau unfolding. Tyler, visibly shaken and remorseful, hesitated briefly before joining Aaron on his knees, mumbling a heartfelt apology. Jake Bennett wavered, pride clashing violently with emerging shame. Eventually, under the intense weight of expectation, he too reluctantly approached Leonard. His shoulders slumped, his gaze fixed firmly downward as he knelt awkwardly. "I'm sorry," he muttered softly, nearly inaudible. Leonard, visibly moved, yet composed, extended his hand gently toward each boy. "Stand up," he urged softly but firmly. "Change does not come from humiliation, but from genuine reflection and meaningful action. Your apology today is a step toward redemption. Your future actions must continue this path." The judge, visibly touched, yet resolute, finally delivered her verdict. She mandated significant financial restitution, comprehensive reforms within Crestwood's institutions, and the establishment of the Leonard Hughes Fellowship for Justice, dedicated to educating young people on civil rights and systemic equity. As Leonard exited the courthouse, he was greeted by applause and grateful smiles from the assembled crowd. Angela walked closely beside him, her expression one of pride and quiet determination. "Dad, She whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You've done something extraordinary today." Leonard paused briefly, reflecting deeply. "We've begun something important today, Angela. Justice is not a destination, it is a continuous journey, and we've just taken a powerful step forward." Together, father and daughter moved through the gathered crowd, leaving behind a community now ready at last to confront its past and build toward a brighter, more equitable future. In the months following the historic trial, Crestwood experienced a profound transformation. Leonard Hughes watched with quiet pride as his community embarked on a path of genuine introspection and change. The Leonard Hughes Fellowship for Justice quickly became a beacon, attracting students and advocates passionate about dismantling systemic prejudice. Leonard's modest home became an informal classroom buzzing with young people eager to learn from the retired judge whose quiet courage had ignited a powerful social reckoning. Angela coordinated seminars, workshops, and guest lectures featuring prominent civil rights figures, fostering dialogue and understanding throughout the town. Aaron Mitchell emerged as one of the fellowship's most devoted participants. His journey from hesitant accomplice to passionate advocate inspired others, demonstrating the real possibility of personal redemption. Aaron began mentoring younger students, sharing openly about his experiences and lessons learned. His genuine remorse and commitment to change earned him respect and forgiveness, even from those he had wronged. Tyler Ramsey, humbled by the trial's outcome, volunteered regularly at local community initiatives. His family's considerable wealth became instrumental in funding educational scholarships and minority business grants, actively contributing to the community's healing process. Jake Bennett faced the hardest path. Initially resistant, he eventually sought counseling, grappling with the uncomfortable truths of his upbringing. Slowly, Jake began to publicly acknowledge his mistakes, advocating for systemic reforms within local institutions. His transformation was gradual but sincere, exemplifying the profound impact of accountability. The fellowship's efforts culminated in a vibrant mural painted on Crestwood's community center, depicting the town's challenging journey toward justice and equity. At its center stood a portrait of Leonard Hughes, a dignified symbol of quiet strength and moral courage. One sunny afternoon, Leonard stood before the completed mural, joined by Angela, Aaron, Tyler, and Jake. A crowd of townspeople gathered around each face, reflecting a tapestry of emotions: pride, humility, hope. Aaron stepped forward, addressing the assembled crowd. "Judge Hughes taught us something essential, that our past doesn't define us if we choose to change. We are the architects of our future." His voice resonated deeply, sincerity clear. Jake, hesitantly at first, but gaining confidence, spoke next. "I've learned that privilege comes with responsibility. Real change begins with admitting mistakes and striving to make amends every day. Thank you, Judge Hughes, for guiding us toward better selves." Tyler smiled warmly, echoing their sentiments. Justice isn't just a word. It's action, compassion, and relentless commitment to fairness. We owe our community nothing less. Finally, Leonard addressed the crowd, his voice gentle yet powerful. Today, Crestwood is choosing a new path, one of honesty, empathy, and genuine equality. Remember, this journey is ongoing. Let this mural remind us all, justice requires vigilance, courage, and above all, compassion. Applause erupted spontaneously, echoing off the mural and filling the streets with renewed energy and hope. Leonard and Angela exchanged a quiet, knowing glance, their shared journey having brought Crestwood to this moment of genuine rebirth. As dusk settled softly over the transformed town, Leonard felt profound peace. He knew that true justice lay not in vengeance, but in the transformative power of compassion, accountability, and hope. Together, Crestwood would continue moving forward, united by the lessons of their shared past and committed to building a brighter, more equitable future.